Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Nao Gamo. I'm a PhD neuroscientist and entrepreneur, and I'm the founder and CEO of NeuroSonics Medical. Next slide, please. NeuroSonics Medical is harnessing sound waves and a minimally invasive approach to provide an alternative surgical treatment for drug-resistant epilepsy. Our goal is to provide these patients back their livelihoods, their independence, and their plans for the future. Next slide, please. There are around 3 million adults living in the US with epilepsy, and the first line of treatment is usually anti-seizure medications. However, over 1 million, almost 40% of these patients have drug-resistant epilepsy, which means that they fail to respond to at least 2 anti-seizure medications. However, in many cases, many of these patients have been struggling for years, even decades, trying to find a treatment that works. Next, please. A fraction of patients with drug-resistant epilepsy undergo surgical treatment each year. The standard of care for that is an open surgery to remove the part of the brain underlying the seizures. And while the majority of these patients do experience significant improvement in seizure control, brain surgery can come with debilitating side effects. Next, please. NeuroSonics Medical is introducing an alternative surgical method to treat drug-resistant epilepsy. And can you play the video, please? We're introducing a miniaturized focused ultrasound device that's inserted through a small hole, and the ultrasound waves can be focused through both cerebral spinal fluid and tissue to ablate or destroy a target at a safe distance away from the tip of the probe. And importantly, we're designing our device to be able to steer the focus of the ultrasound so that we can shape the ablation target. This means that we can provide precise, personalized treatment while being minimally invasive. Next, please. We believe that with our device, we can improve seizure outcomes for the majority of surgical candidates with drug-resistant epilepsy. Without the risks of traditional surgery. Next, please. We're commercializing cutting-edge research from the #1 neurosurgery department and biomedical engineering program in the country at the Johns Hopkins University. And our technology has been supported by grants from Johns Hopkins, TEDCO, and the National Science Foundation. Next, please. Our device is designed to be much less invasive than traditional surgery while overcoming the shortcomings of more recent technologies like laser ablation and transcranial focused ultrasound. Our device fills in a niche for brain targets that are larger in size, are oddly shaped, maybe around the periphery of the brain, and even multiple targets with a single insertion. Also, unlike with laser ablation, our device does not need to be inserted directly into the target, adding an extra layer of safety. So in addition to reducing the morbidity associated with surgery, our device should be able to more completely resect the desired brain target and give many more patients the chance to be seizure-free. Next, please. Our target addressable market is almost $1 billion with the capital purchase alone. And our market is expected to expand as more patients learn about and choose to undergo surgical treatments as we expand into additional applications, including the pediatric population, brain tumors, and intracranial hemorrhage. Next, please. We've assembled a strong interdisciplinary team to take this device to market. I'm the founder and CEO, and my background includes 15 years in neuroscience research. Dr. Amir Mambachi is the lead inventor of our device, and he's an ultrasound and neurosurgery expert at the Johns Hopkins University. He's also the former founder and CEO of Sonics Medical, in which he developed an ultrasound device for spine surgery. Dr. June Kang is an epileptologist at Johns Hopkins, and her research interests focus on drug-resistant epilepsy and minimally invasive surgical treatments. NeuroSonics Medical is a portfolio company at the Maryland Development Center, a startup studio in Baltimore. Dr. Hemingway and Dr. Blankenship from MDC are serial entrepreneurs, and they serve as our business advisors. And finally, Dr. Restaino is a bioengineer formerly at the FDA and an entrepreneur, and he serves as our technical advisor. NeuroSonics Medical is a woman and minority-owned company in an opportunity zone in Baltimore City. Next, please. So far, we've raised over $500,000 in grant funding to reach our first major milestone, which has been to build an ultrasound transducer that's small enough to be safely inserted into the brain while packing enough power to be able to burn brain tissue. And after breaking and burning the prototype several times, we finally reached our final design. The $250,000 investment prize will help us to reach our next major milestone, which is to perform the first preclinical study to test for safety and efficacy in a live animal model. And we would love to have your support moving forward. And last slide, please. So now I invite you all to join us in our future plans.
Get the prize for sounding the most like you're
Shark
on Shark Tank.
I was going to say the same thing. So thank you, Dr. Gamo.
Thank you.
So I've got probably the tough question. So you're the first applicant that's actually from a university system.
Yes.
And I noticed in reviewing your application that the IP is currently held by Johns Hopkins.
Yes.
And I've also noticed that you received $528,000 previously, but in non-dilutive funding.
Yes.
So tell me, what happens to the IP? How do you actually take investor funds versus taking, this is not a grant, it's an investment. So tell me how you work that.
Right. So we're actually, the first patent that we're working with, it does belong to Johns Hopkins Technology Ventures. So we're in the midst of discussing terms for an option to license with Johns Hopkins. And then we're also, moving forward, we're applying for a provisional application that's assigned to the company for additional features of the device. So yes, we're planning to option for an option to license.
Okay, so then you're saying that you could accept dilutive funding if you if you got this investment price.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, I have a lot of technical questions.
Yeah.
First of all, I love the fact that we're using and you're using ultrasound technology. And two important questions is, one is, have you thought about where the use case will be and what the clinical trial will look like so we can prove the efficacy of ultrasound ablation? And two, about your competitors, laser ablation and Insightec for focused ultrasound. The laser ablation, we have a lot of safety feedback. We have the MRI that tells us how much heating we're doing and what the damage to the neighboring tissue is. So that's one advantage. And Insightec is completely without incision.
Right, right.
So how do you fare with that?
Yes, so compared to laser ablation, so my understanding is that with laser ablation, yes, there's a lot of clinical data already, but and it tends to do quite well with small spheres or a string of spheres along the trajectory of the probe. And so we're trying to complement that by introducing steering capabilities so that we can, do larger shapes or funny, odd shapes without having to do multiple stage surgeries, and also. Because we're using ultrasound, we won't have to insert the tip directly into the target. So depending on the target location, laser ablation may work very well, for example, with mesial temporal epilepsy, but in other regions, that don't work well with laser ablation, we're hoping that we can fill in the niche. And then compared to Insightec, so Insightec, of course, it's a non-invasive ultrasound helmet, so it's great that it's non-invasive, but the way, at least with the state of the technology right now, I believe it's doing quite well ablating the center of the brain, but not so much around the periphery due to the beam algorithms and trying to get through the ultrasound through the skull. So we're trying to get around that by inserting through a small hole in the skull.
And then the last part was, what would the clinical trial look like?
Oh, yes. So right now we're wondering if it would be best to compare it, say, to mesial temporal lobe epilepsy, because that's where a lot of the trials have been done for laser ablation, and to show whether it can perform just as well or better than laser ablation.
Thank you.
Question from the floor, Dr. Porter.
It's a follow-up to Dr. Sharon's question, really. Transcranial ultrasound is used for very highly specific lesions, for example, an essential tremor.
Right.
And so it has the ability to really focus.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the only advantage of your system over this totally non-invasive approach is that you're going to be able perhaps to do something a little bit more close to the cerebral cortex? Is that the sole advantage of your process? Because you have to actually stick something in the brain and they don't.
Yes, so I would say that's the main advantage compared to Insightec system, being able to, in theory, focus anywhere in the brain. I understand that if we don't have to make an incision, we don't want to make an incision.
Dr. Sperling.
So the advantage of your technique compared with the Insightec is that you have to shave the head, and it takes about 5 hours for the person to lie on the helmet in order to deliver energy to destroy the lesion. In your case, how long does the probe have to be in to destroy the lesion? And also, if you have a single probe, what prevents you from causing damage all the way along? How do you focus it so it's at a more distal target?
Right. So while inserting into the brain, what I actually didn't show was that we're designing our device to be inserted through Nico's brain path, which is it's essentially a metal tube with a pointed tip, and then you insert it. You insert it through the grooves in the brain, and it allows surgeons to insert various tools without damaging the tissue around it. So we're designed. So that's already FDA approved and been shown to use for various applications like intracranial hemorrhage and brain tumors. And so we're designing our device to be inserted through that. And then in terms of the ultrasound being focused, it's so the ultrasound can focus at a distance away from the tip in a pretty focused manner without causing damage to surrounding tissue. But of course, that's something we want to verify in our preclinical studies.
And how long does the probe have to be in?
Yeah. Yes, so it'll take on, once it's in, it'll take on the order of minutes. Right now, we're designing it to be MR compatible since a lot of surgeons are already using MR navigation. But in future, there's something in a pipeline that we're thinking about is to have a probe that does both ultrasound imaging and ultrasound therapeutic ultrasound so that you can visualize in real time while ablating.
But under an hour, then you're saying?
Yeah.
Dr. Fountain, we see you on our screen. Are you going to ask a question?
Well, my question is kind of analogous to Dr. Sperling's, and that is how big of a lesion can you make, or what limits the shape of it? Is it multiple applications that create the lesion, or can you create a specific shape with one application?
I'm sorry,
I'm
yes. Sorry.
I can ask it again. How big was the lesion, or how big a lesion can you make, and what shapes can you make?
Okay, yeah, so this is still theoretical that we'd be able to make larger or funny shapes. So far we're at this stage where we're showing the bare minimum proof of concept to be able to steer 2 points in a cadaver model next. So yes, we're still trying to figure out what the limits of this technology are. That's where we are right now.
Anybody else on Zoom or in person? Okay, great. Thank you so much. You're going to have to go scoop for a little while. Making it easy on the sharks.